A frustrated composer, a fractured band, an absent member, and a beautiful idea for a song. These elements all come together in the story behind the creation and recording of Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. Widely regarded as one of their finest tracks, it has also become their most streamed song, a testament to its timeless appeal. In this video, we will dive into the fascinating story of this hit and uncover why John Lennon did not participate in its recording. I wasn't Lennon, I wasn't McCartney, I was me. And the only reason I started to write songs was because I thought, well, if they can write them, I can write them. These words from George Harrison reflect his quiet determination and the realization that, despite his position in the Beatles, he had his own voice to share. George had long been overshadowed by the prolific songwriting duo of John Lennon and Paul McCartney. George's contributions to the Beatles' catalog were relatively sparse and overlooked in the early years. His first major breakthrough came only in the band's seventh album, Revolver, with the song Taxman, which stands out as a remarkable track in the Beatles' catalog. Taxman was a politically charged commentary on Britain's tax system, showcasing George's ability to create songs with depth and bite. But it was still a rare example of his material receiving significant attention. On albums like Rubber Soul and Help, he contributed tracks like If I Needed Someone and I Need You. But these were still outshone by the band's most famous hits written by Lennon and McCartney. In the White Album, George Harrison introduced While My Guitar Gently Weeps, a song that marked a significant evolution in his songwriting, a bold step forward in his creative journey. However, despite this breakthrough, he felt his contributions were still overshadowed by the dominance of John Lennon and Paul McCartney within the band. At one point, George told John that he was seriously considering recording a solo album to release the songs he had been quietly accumulating. John actually encouraged him to pursue the idea, but this probably didn't sit well with George and only fueled his discontent further. This sense of isolation and frustration reached a boiling point in January 1969. After months of internal strife, George made the dramatic decision to quit the band on January 10, 1969. It was a moment that reflected his growing discontent and sense of being sidelined in the band. Though he would return just days later, this temporary departure highlighted the deepening cracks in the Beatles' dynamic, and George's frustration with his position in the band would ultimately influence his future work. The early months of 1969 were a difficult time for George. Not only had he quit the Beatles temporarily, but he was also arrested for marijuana possession, an incident that had a significant public impact. To add to his troubles, George had to have his tonsils removed. Despite all these challenges, George found a way to create something beautiful and uplifting. The inspiration for Here Comes the Sun came during a visit to Eric Clapton's house in Surrey, England, probably in April of '69. Tired of the pressures of the Beatles' business dealings, George decided to just not show up for a scheduled meeting, and instead, he headed to Clapton's home, where he could escape the heavy responsibilities that weighed on him. It was a warm, sunny day when George wandered around Clapton's garden with an acoustic guitar, and that's when the song began to take shape. In a later interview, George explained, Here Comes the Sun was written at the time when Apple was getting like school, where we had to go and be businessmen, sign this and sign that. Anyway, it seems as if winter in England goes on forever. By the time spring comes, you really deserve it. So one day I decided I was going to sag off Apple and I went over to Eric Clapton's house. The relief of not having to go see all those dopey accountants was wonderful, and I walked around the garden with one of Eric's acoustic guitars. It was a really nice, sunny day, and I picked up the guitar, which was the first time I'd played the guitar for a couple of weeks, because I'd been so busy. And the first thing that came out was that song. It just came. In Eric Clapton's biography, he himself recalls that day's events. It was a beautiful spring morning, and we were sitting at the top of a big field at the bottom of the garden. We had our guitars and were just strumming away when he started singing, "Dee-da-dee-dee, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter." The Abbey Road album sessions began on July 1st, 1969. Just a few days later, on July 7th, George, Paul, and Ringo came together to work on Here Comes the Sun. Before recording began, George gave detailed instructions to his bandmates, particularly Ringo, to navigate the song's complex timing. Once sorted, George led the session using his Gibson J200 acoustic guitar with a capo on the 7th fret to create a bright, resonant tone that defines the song. 13 takes were recorded on an 8-track machine with Paul's Rickenbacker bass on track 1, Ringo's drums on track 2, George's acoustic guitar on track 3, and his guide vocals on track 8. The last take was chosen as the foundation for the final version. The next day, July 8th, additional layers were added. Ringo overdubbed more intricate drum fills, and George contributed electric guitar parts, running them through a Leslie speaker for a swirling effect. On July 9th, further refinements were made. Ringo's drum fills and George's electric guitar were consolidated onto track 5 through a reduction mix to free up space for additional overdubs. George then recorded his lead vocals on track 6, while he and Paul harmonized, adding 2 layers of backing vocals to tracks 7 and 8, erasing the guide vocals in the process.
Here comes the sun.
On July 16th, the group returned to the track. A round of precise hand claps was added to track 8, and George recorded a harmonium overdub onto the newly available track 5. Afterward, the song was set aside for a few weeks. On August 6th, George revisited Here Comes the Sun to experiment with additional electric guitar parts, using his Rosewood Fender Telecaster. Dissatisfied with the result, he tried again on August 11th, but ultimately decided neither version suited the song. These guitar overdubs were preserved on the master tape, but left unused. Decades later, in 2012, producers George and Giles Martin, along with George's son Danny Harrison, unearthed these forgotten solos while reviewing the original 8-track master for a documentary, capturing their discovery on film.
Totally different to anything I've ever heard.
George decided that the track needed an orchestral score. So on August 15th, a woodwind ensemble recorded their parts on track 4, while a 9-piece string section replaced George's harmonium overdub on track 5. Finally, the track was finished. Not exactly. The finishing touch came on August 19th, when George added a Moog synthesizer part to track 4, partially erasing the woodwind contributions. Harrison's subtle use of the Moog synthesizer, a cutting-edge invention at the time, became a defining feature of the song. Harrison later recalled, "I first heard about the Moog synthesizer in America. I had to have mine made especially. It was enormous, with hundreds of jack plugs and 2 keyboards. With its bright tone, the instrument serves to convey the sun's increasing brilliance and became a vital element in the track's sound." In the early hours of August the 20th, Here Comes the Sun was mixed in stereo in a single attempt. The tape was played slightly faster than usual, subtly shortening the track and raising its pitch by about a quarter tone. Through meticulous craftsmanship and layers of innovation, Here Comes the Sun emerged as one of the Beatles' most celebrated songs, a testament to George Harrison's brilliance and the collaborative effort of his bandmates. By 1969, tensions within the Beatles were running high. John Lennon, in particular, was becoming more detached from the band, and his relationship with Paul McCartney was increasingly strained. Following the turbulent Let It Be sessions that had happened earlier that year, the band declared something of a truce to record Abbey Road. Despite these efforts, the fractures in their unit were evident. The real reason John didn't play on Here Comes the Sun, however, wasn't due to personal disputes with George Harrison. In early July, John had been involved in a car accident that left him unable to participate in the initial sessions for the song. On the day he returned to the studio, the band was working on Paul's Maxwell's Silver Hammer, and Paul invited him to join in on backing vocals. But John declined and left the studio shortly after. On July 16th, George led Paul and Ringo through a session to add hand claps to Here Comes the Sun. Though John had already been attending the sessions, he didn't participate in this one either, likely because he still wasn't feeling up to it. 5 days later, however, he regained his energy for the recording of Come Together. Abbey Road was released on September 26, 1969, with Here Comes the Sun sequenced as the first track on side 2 of the LP, along with Something, another one of George Harrison's compositions from the album. Here Comes the Sun helped establish him as a talented composer in his own right, on par with Lennon and McCartney. The song marked a turning point in Harrison's career, showing the world that he had the ability to create music that was just as impactful and beautiful as the band's other legendary songwriters. Today, Here Comes the Sun stands as the most streamed Beatles song on platforms like Spotify, a testament to its enduring popularity. Its bright, uplifting message and the sheer beauty of the music have ensured that the song continues to captivate new generations of listeners. It is no longer just a track from Abbey Road. It's a cultural landmark, embodying a sense of hope, renewal, and the power of music to heal and inspire. And there you have it, the story of Here Comes the Sun. What is your favorite part of Here Comes the Sun? Is it your favorite Beatles song? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Until next time.